the network holds up today, so we shall see.
Okay, so it says it's live. I'm just going to do a quick check just to make sure. Don't want the same mistakes happening again.
One live hour, not live.
A whole hour down the drain. I was so mad at myself for that. It's
okay.
These
things happen. These things happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, best time to happen is when you have no one tuning in. So hopefully that'll change.
And we wouldn't have because we weren't there.
Even we didn't tune into our own webinar. How does that work? Oh boy. All right. So for those of you just tuning in with us, all 0 of you. It's okay, it takes some time for people, probably people trying to find, a way to escape the boss or something, or, they want to listen in, but, we'll give them time. We got a whole hour talking about this.
Exactly. Okay? If they don't watch it live, then they can always watch the rerun.
Exactly. They'll get this banter from us that I don't know how to cut from, because it's being saved to YouTube directly. So we'll figure it out. But, that makes us personable. So that's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So it's up and streaming. I'm just going to close it this time so that I don't get distracted by my own beautiful face, even though. Yeah, beautiful. All right. So thank you for joining us. My name is Kenneth Hard, and with me is Gareth Steed.
Good afternoon, everybody.
We are both from the Oxford Wellbeing and Behaviour Clinic. I think I said that in the right order. Yeah. We're based in southern Tangerang in Indonesia. We help with any kind of your behavioral needs because both of us are trained in counseling and behaviorism, applied behavioral analysis. So if you live in the southwest side of Indonesia and you need some help in breaking some old habits, learning some new ones, hopefully good ones. If you have a son or daughter or aunt or uncle or grandfather that needs a little bit of training, just go ahead and give us a call. We know how to use our ABA tricks to help you out. We'll also help be a listening friend in case you need one, which I suppose everyone is probably thinking about, considering that many of us are still on lockdown and some of the movie theaters are still closed. So again, if you need any kind of behavioral support or just someone to listen to, we keep everything confidential. So you don't have to worry about the school giving your kid bad grades because they found out about something. No, we won't talk to anyone. Okay, at least not without your permission, unless you want us to talk to someone. In which case, you can go ahead and take the lead on that. But first, you have to call. You have to call our number, which if you'll just give me 1 minute, because I do want to read this out. I think I forgot to read it out last time. So I do have to get it on the screen so that I can read it out. The phone number for the Oxford Wellbeing and Behaviour Clinic is +62. But if you're already in Indonesia, you can just dial 0812-1009-4133. Again, that phone number is 0812-1009-4133. I heard myself for a second there. Let me clarify that, because I think I may have the 1,000 part probably tripped some people up. So I'll say it one more time. This time will be the clearest. Okay, 0812-1009-4133. For our Indonesian listeners, this will probably be about the only thing I can say in Indonesian. Spanish there for a second. No.
Gobbledygook for a minute.
Yeah. Nomor telepon 0812 112 100 9413.
Yeah.
And if you have any problems with my pronunciation of Indonesian numerals, just go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Any comments, good or bad, you know what? Skip the bad. Just leave good or neutral comments. All right. We'll take constructive criticism, but keep it friendly. Keep it, productive. All right. With that being, let's go ahead and jump into our topic. Student mental health. Now, Gareth, did you wanna start this off this time, or you want me to go ahead and do my thing?
You go ahead and do your thing. It worked last time.
All right. So I'll start us off. I found 2 articles that pertain to Indonesia. And the first one is a cross-sectional survey that took place in May of 2020. So this was about a month or 2 into when everyone was getting serious about the pandemic around the world. I remember you and I, January and February, and mostly you were going up in front of the students at the school we used to work at, telling them, you got to wear your mask. Or no, at first you were saying don't wear your mask, and then when things started getting serious, then you said, yeah, we do have to wear a mask. And then like 2 days after that switched, we just stopped doing in-person teaching in mid-March, which was a little convenient for us because we had the spring holiday for everyone to kind of, get with it. And the switching of the messaging wasn't your fault. I mean, it's what we were being told at the time. It took us a little bit of time.
The reasoning behind it initially, I think, was that the school was concerned about the number of masks available at the time. They were still a bit of a rarity back then. So we said, unless you're feeling ill, don't wear them. And then the message from on high changed, and it was, no, everybody has to wear masks, and it's kind of been like that ever since, hasn't it? So.
Yeah, and I do recall because there was a person I lived with at the time who was in one of the risk areas, and so we did get masks ahead of time. And when we were looking at getting more, because again we didn't know what the supply chain was looking at, we found that they were getting increasingly hard to get for about another month or 2. So that stuff's normal, but. Our topic today isn't about masks, it's about student mental health. But yeah, this cross-sectional survey in May of 2020, last year, reported, these are self-reports over the internet from teenagers and individuals in their early 20s. Approximately 21% of them reported some level of depression, from mild to very serious, very severe. Now, this sample size is pretty small, so I'm not going to lay my whole, lay full trust on this. But it is a snapshot at that time, and I would not be surprised if a greater study of the same system, or maybe with less self-selection of these people reporting in, would show that the amounts are higher. And I think one thing they've taken into consideration is that a sample size of 200 by itself is too small. But when you take into consideration that, a lot of people, there does feel like there is kind of a stigma against reporting that you may have depression or may have some emotional struggles. So that's personally why I think these numbers are underreported. I think 21% is looking a little low. What do you think? I get middle moving. Did you get that? Or are you frozen? So again, this I'll go ahead and post the link. Ah, you're back. Okay. So,
Yep. Sorry, network problem.
All right, no problem. 21 reported self-selected online some form of depression. Sample size is small, but I think it might be bigger. What say you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the sample size is too small to make an effective judgment. But if we compare it to other surveys and other studies that have taken place just with regards to mental health, then we are looking at a much larger segment of society than is being reported in the survey.
Again, these are just the people that are admitting to it, even under the condition of anonymity.
And this is in Indonesia. Let's face it. I mean, it's still stigmatized here. It is still kind of catching up on the understanding that mental health is an issue that is not somebody's fault. It is just something that happens, and so yeah, I agree that it is probably vastly underreported.
And I mean, what we do know about emotional difficulty is that it can kind of spread. And I'll give one anecdote that I used last time. Unfortunately, wasn't recorded, but this one anecdote of when I was working with conducting applied behavioral analysis therapy for children with learning disabilities like autism and ADHD. I remember one time I was working with this child who had a mild to moderate autism. The mom was home, and usually I'm just doing play therapy with the student, with the child, and the mom's kind of in the background, taking care of emails or doing other work related to her job. And there was one time where I remember she was on the phone, and while she's on the phone, I didn't think anything of it, but I noticed that the child I was working with was very, very stressed, was just showing classic symptoms of anxiety. By this time the child knew me, so it wasn't connected to me being new or anything. This was child's getting a little jittery. Child is disconnecting, going in between rooms, coming back for a little bit, but disconnecting again. A little bit of shakiness in the voice. And that's another thing about autism. People with autism is they talk. They can talk. There's different levels of severity with autism, but most children with autism are able to talk. It's just it could be a little. It has odd patterns to it that don't really fit within the normal conversational pace that neurotypical children have. But I mean, even when it's awkward, you can tell there's something up. So going back to, I was trying to figure it out, and then it dawned on me. The mother, I started to pick up on it. The mother was angry on the phone. Now, to me, the mother was actually pretty low energy generally, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just generally was pretty mellow, pretty calm. And so when I heard her get angry on the phone, there was such a small increase in her expressionisms that it didn't I almost didn't notice. I thought it was just a normal phone call coming from the other room. But it must have been so unusual for the child I was working with because he picked up on it totally. And not only did it help me kind of understand that children with autism generally can have the same field of emotions as everyone else. It's just sometimes it's overshadowed by the more obvious behavior trends. But it was a perfect example of how one person's change in their emotional state or their behavior can so easily be internalized by someone else, even when there's no intention of that person intending to cause that.
Yeah. Precisely, and as we've spoken about many times in the past, how we react, how we are around children has a huge impact on their mental health to a large degree, but also on their behavior and everything else. I mean, you and I both specialize in behavior at the same time, and Kenneth is very much on the applied behavioral analysis side of things, and I specialize a lot more in the special educational needs side of things, but that we overlap greatly in these areas. And one of the things that always crops up in these is that the problems in behavior are not always linked to what you think they're linked to. They're often linked to how people around them are reacting to things and how people around them speak to them and behave around them. And that behavior can lead to these mental health anxiety issues. And especially at the moment when we're in this COVID lockdown, that's stretching it even further. They're seeing us a lot more. Children are around us adults an awful lot more than they have been. And so, yeah, that reaction, our reaction to them, how we react, and in the example you gave, Kenneth, which was the mother getting angry and the child becoming anxious about it, is a prime example. And a child does not have to have a special learning problem or a special educational need or anything to feel strong emotions and on the more negative side of emotions when they witness something that they find uncomfortable in themselves. And a mother getting angry is one of those.
And I would suspect that even though this was a case that was made fairly obvious to me because I was with the family long enough to kind of know their dynamics, it could be argued that children, and this was a very young child at the time, so it's not like he was. I think he was like age 3 or 4 at the time, so it's not like he would have had a whole lot of socialization. I think he wasn't even in kindergarten by the time I was working with him. But the effect still, like you said, the effect still occurs. It's just as people get older, as children become children, as children get older, go into adolescence, go into their teenage years, they're more adept at hiding it.
Yeah.
They're more adept at trying to deflect. They're more adept at any other kind of social skill that might lessen the burden. And having to explain why you're feeling anxious, having to explain what you think the cause is and what you think can help, and wondering if someone's going to take you seriously, those are all hard things to take on. That's kind of a challenge in itself, being able to admit.
And then if you imagine that I mean, there's some statistics around mental health. I'm just looking at it here a second. First from a seminar I gave on mental health not so long back, but 1 in 10 people in 2018 was suffering from mental health problems. But according to the World Health Organization, this year that's going to go up to 1.4. And actually, the probability is actually going to be even higher than that. Now, if you think that 50% of all mental health issues begin before a child is 14, and 75% before a child is 24, or a young adult is 24, we're kind of getting an idea of the problems. And part of it is the stresses and strains of modern society that we place on children. We expect children to grow up. We expect them to do an awful lot more than we ever expected them to do in the past. And year on year on year, generation on generation, it becomes more and more so. We expect them to perform academically brilliantly. We expect them to be good in everything they do. We expect them to keep up with trends and everything else in technology and whatnot. At the same time, they are trying to deal with the onset of puberty. Their hormones are raging. They're having these emotions, these feelings that they've never, ever experienced before. And they're trying to process them at the same time of having to process all of this stuff we're putting on them at the same time. Add to that now that we're asking them also to cope with isolation and lockdowns and everything else, and the removal of all the enjoyable things they had in their life. We've taken them away from their friends, from their support structure within schools. And it's an apocalypse waiting to happen, basically, on a mental health side.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's probably gradually going to happen. It's not like you're going to wake up one morning and then everyone's in the most depressive state you've already seen. It's going to be gradual. You're going to be seeing children trying to use these coping strategies they've had before in the past, maybe ramp them up a bit to try and compensate, maybe develop new ones. And it's all going to be focused to try and reduce the strain. And we think of reducing the strain as in, okay, solving the problem. So that's good. Not necessarily. Reducing the strain might be hiding it so that you don't have to encounter some of the other challenges that come with involving other people in it, involving people who might try to take charge of someone's emotional state, which unless you're well trained, it's not going to be that easy.
No, precisely, and then it is going to be it's going to be very difficult. And you're right that it's the problem is it's the frog in boiling water scenario. It's you drop in a frog into cold water and slowly begin to heat the water up. Then the frog will just stay in the water, but if you drop them straight into boiling water, they'll jump straight back out again. We're the frogs in the cold water. And our mental health is just slowly eroding, but because we don't notice it, we don't see it, by the time we realize is we've gone quite a long way down the path, and it's going to take a long time to get back to mental health again.
And that's not even going into some of the challenges we'll likely face later this year. I mean, some of the challenges like the economy downturn. A lot of economists I've been listening to and reading have been saying that there's still kind of a disconnect between those higher, middle, and higher managers that can afford to save their money, afford to not spend, even though they might still be having emotional issues. But then you have the lower class who is living paycheck to paycheck, and everyone's expecting that to kind of catch up with the upper class, and a big correction to kind of take place, considering that general productivity has been really low for about the last year. And when that starts hitting, you're probably going to see this even more exacerbated.
It is a perfect storm for mental health problems. You know, we have the removal of all enjoyment, the removal of everything that we've enjoyed doing, the isolation, the removal from friends, the removal from support networks outside of the family, and even in some cases within the family. You know, I mean, a lot of families here in Indonesia are very lucky in that they live together a lot of the time. But that's not everywhere, and it's not even everywhere here in Indonesia that parents and grandparents are separated, and so that is removed. And add to that, as you just said, the economic downturn and everything else that's going on. People on who are losing their jobs, those who are lucky enough to keep their jobs, are on vastly reduced wages. And we are building up for that perfect storm for mental health problems.
And so it's something that we all have to keep in mind, that we're right in the middle of this. It's like a roller coaster where we've kind of already started going down the incline, but there's going to still be a lot of twists and turns and maybe more sharp falls to come. What we're going to have to do is just do our best to hang on. But we've got some other strategy and tips that Gareth and I are going to be talking about. Maybe we can help you out. These are general. These are not prescribed for any individual, but you may want to take your pick, see if any of these work for you. I'm going to start probably with the more broad ones because I think these probably apply to most, the broad majority of students and teenagers. And so I'd say the first strategy that you should probably consider is focusing how you communicate with your children or the children under your charge. The communication is key because that helps to kind of soften the impact of any changes, any radical changes that you may be forced to do with your household because of your personal situations. The more you communicate, the more you can kind of draw these children in, not necessarily as passengers, but people who could support you through these changes. The more it makes you feel like a team, and the more you can kind of count on them to help you instead of constantly thinking of them as another obstacle. Now, I'm not implying anyone thinks of their children as obstacles, but I can kind of understand there's that natural tendency to think of, well, I've got a reduction in my paycheck coming, or I've got we're put under stay-at-home orders. I can't do anything about that. I now have to figure out how to brace my children for that. Well, see if you can get them on your side to work with you. Don't. I know you're limited. I know there are some things that you just can't get around, but for the things that you can try and pull your children in to help you out with, give it a shot, because that helps build that sense of trust that is so important, not just for the parent or the teacher, but also for the children, for the teenagers.
Yeah, exactly. And children are resilient. Children bounce. You know, they're very, very good at coping with general things. And if you say to them and explain to them and communicate with them clearly, look, you know, we are going through some problems, as you know, and it doesn't really matter how old the child is. My daughter is 5, and we say, look, unfortunately, we can't go to the playgrounds because of the virus. we can't do this because of this. And if you're open and honest with them, we you know, if you say to your child, look, daddy or mummy is on a reduced pay this at the moment because of the virus, and therefore, you know, we can't afford to buy you as many birthday presents or whatever as we usually would, or we can't afford to go to McDonald's as often as we did. The child will understand, and as long as you kind of explain it to them in a sensible and calm way, then they will accept it and they will do what is necessary. And you can still do these things, but you do them more rarely, and then they become much more of a treat. And it's a really good opportunity to kind of reset that button occasionally as well.
And I'm new to YouTube, so there's going to be a lot of hiccups here. And one of the things that I want to bring in is our experience. I'm not a parent. I don't have any children of my own. So even though I often bring up these suggestions, a lot of time in my head, it's either through theory or what I've heard other parents refer to me that said to help them. I do have 8 years of counseling experience at a local high school and elementary school. And I do have 3 years of applied behavioral analysis before that. And all of that's on top of my bachelor's degree in psychology. As I understand it, Gareth, you are a parent. So if I say anything weird, you can always correct me on that.
Yeah, we're going through it, and we're seeing the results of it. And my daughter is exhibiting signs of anxiety. You know, she'll be 6 next month. So next month's her birthday, and she'll be 6. But she has taken to occasionally wetting the bed again. She complains sometimes. She'll say, "My tummy hurts. My tummy hurts." And with the young children, that's often a trigger to say that I'm feeling very uncomfortable with something at the moment. And she's exhibiting these signs of anxiety, and it's because everything that she enjoyed has kind of been taken away or vastly reduced. I mean, we used to love going out to the wonderful parks that they have here with the big play areas. And she used to love doing that. She adored going swimming, and we would swim every single day, and she was getting very, very good at swimming. She loves going to school, and she's in the same school that I'm head of counseling in, and Kenneth used to be in. And I took his job.
Yeah.
You know, and all these things have been taken away. And for a 5-year-old, to have everything taken away and not to have necessarily that capacity, that cognitive reasoning to work out exactly why. All it is it was there, and then the next day it wasn't there. My swimming pool was there, and then the next day I couldn't go anymore, and I've not been able to swim for 10 months. I used to be able to go to the parks, and now I'm not. And all of that adds to anxiety for children. And you know, even me with my daughter and kind of theoretically knowing what to do, we still see anxiety in her, and we will see anxiety in pretty much most children, I think. That's why I said this 1 in 4 is coming right down. You know, 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 2 will exhibit some level of anxiety.
Yeah, and you know, I want to say it's not just the way the stress works. You know, plugging it into what we were talking about a moment ago. Your daughter might be having stress because now these options are cut off. Then you might be having stress because it's difficult to explain this. You know, there's a lot of concepts involved, like how diseases spread and why we have to follow doctor's orders, even though when we can't see the threat with our own 2 eyes necessarily. And having to explain this and why we can't do these things brings stress to the parent. And then the child not only sees that they can't go somewhere, but then they see their parent is stressed. And so they get more stressed. And then the stress of the child starts bringing in possible insecurities parents may have. It becomes a very vicious cycle.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, it's one of the biggest ones that we always speak about, is that anxiety in parents feeds anxiety in children. If a parent, if a teacher, if an important person in that child's life who that child looks up to is displaying symptoms of anxiety, the child will pick up on it. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier with your telephone call. Um, a child will see it, and that will make them anxious. So, hang on a sec, this person is the rock of my life. And for young children, under teens, and even into some of the teen years, parents especially, but also responsible adults in their life, teachers or doctors, whoever, are the foundation, the cornerstone of their life. And if they see them becoming anxious, then they begin to say, well, if they're getting anxious, there must be something severely wrong. And that creates an anxiety in them, but they can't rationalize that anxiety. It's just, well, that person's anxious, now I'm anxious. And that then becomes problematic, and that then really feeds into this anxiety, which can lead then to depression and all the horrible things that goes with depression and self-harm and OCD and everything else. And one of the important factors, sorry, just quickly, one of the very important factors that we always recommend to adults is that no matter how anxious you are feeling, try while you're around your children to present some sort of normality, some sort of consistency in your behavior, and try to kind of keep those moments. I don't say bottle them up, because that's not healthy, but get rid of them while the child is not there, and try not to react to the child in a way that's reflecting your own anxiety.
I think it's also important because what this whole sharing of anxiety between parent or caregiver and child, it really is kind of a concept modeling in action. I mean, it's not all of it, but that's a good part of it. And what parents and teachers should be thinking is, everyone's going through a lot of the same stressors. Some people are going through unique stressors. It's not necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily be seen as something bad that's happening to you or something bad that's happening to everyone. I mean, it is. I'm not going to discount that, but helping to elevate your view on it. If you were to go in that same situation and say, hey, this is a chance for me to model for my students or model for my children what the better ways to try and get through these challenging times. I mean, being able to, I've been in between teaching, counseling, and ABA. I've never had to experience a pandemic before. And so I wouldn't it catches us all off guard. A child comes up to me and says, hey, Mr. Hard, why can't we go to school anymore? Why can't we do this? Sure, I can tell them what I heard on the news, or I can tell them what I read in the textbook, but the feeling, the spirit is not necessarily behind it. Now that we know, it gives me a chance to express to the students that this is kind of like a war effort. I mean, you talk about something like this, probably hasn't happened to this degree where the whole world is having to change their daily routines. Probably hasn't happened to everyone like this ever. But, countries haven't seen anything like this since maybe World War II. I'll throw one out there. The bombing raids in Britain. I mean, I'm sure that changed a lot of day-to-day lives. And I'm sure parents and teachers at that time really struggled with how to model and train children on how to get through it and how to survive it.
Very, very much, and the levels of PTSD in children after World War II were huge. Not only because of the bombing, but what had to happen to the children. They were removed. They were taken to the countryside, out of the big cities, to areas where they were deemed to be safer from the bombing. But that created big anxiety problems and trauma due to separation, etc. And we're kind of seeing something similar now, where it is a separation. It's a separation from normality and a separation from what children have known their entire life. And it doesn't matter the age of the child, whether it's my daughter's age, whether it's a teenager. This thing has not happened, and it is very, very difficult.
And so that's why it comes to us adults, because everything falls on us adults at times like these. It comes to us to kind of look at the situation and say, hey, what lessons do I want my children or my students to pick up from this experience? And do I teach those lessons by trying to keep everything a secret, or do I teach these lessons by discussing with them, by talking them through it, by letting them know why we have to change behaviors, what we have to do to change behaviors, and planning, scheduling, what we do to try and hang on.
And I like the terminology you used there. They're learning the lessons. We have to teach them the lessons, and it really is. We're having to teach these children these human skills, these social skills. We're having to teach them how to survive in this, and it is lessons. It is learning, because these will be skills for life. And if we don't teach these to them now, this is not going anywhere fast. And this is going to keep coming back, and this will not be the last pandemic that we probably face from now on. And so we need to teach. We need to teach these things. We need to teach children how to cope, and therefore, that terminology you use, which is teaching them, is really important.
And not only that, not only to help the children make sense of what's going on, but to also help us adults understand that going through this experience isn't all in vain. We aren't just doing this because, a group of people somewhere made some bad calls and now everyone has to suffer. But now, I'm not saying we should do this again. Heavens no. But I mean, it brings it back to, it gives value to the experience. We'll always reflect on this time as, did we panic and give up, or did we at least try to do what we can to help everyone be better, help our children become stronger in effect? And it's not easy to do. I don't want to say that anyone who doesn't rise to the challenge it's tough. Everyone has their own standards, and so I think it's important for us to be patient. And I'll let you speak, and then I'll go into what being patient is all about.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and it goes back to what you said earlier about modeling. We are as adults, we have to model the correct behavior to children. Generally in life, we must model behavior to children. It's how children learn anything outside of academia, and even inside academia, we're still modeling it to a certain degree.
It's like 90% of learning.
Exactly. And so if we model the correct behavior now, if we as adults, we as parents, we as teachers, we as clinicians, etc., model this correct behavior. Right, I know this is a tough situation, but this is how I'm going to behave during this. I'm going to take each day as it comes, etc., etc. I'm going to just remain calm. I'm not going to let myself get overwhelmed by it. Then when we come out the other side of it, the children will look back on this, and exactly as you said, they'll look back on it and say, well, you know what, my parents or my teachers or my clinicians or my whoever stood up well to that. They didn't let it get to them. They managed to be resilient during it. They got through the other side of it strong, if not stronger than they were before. And this is exactly what happened in the Second World War. People came out of World War II, the last time that we were in anything, as we said, like this, and they looked back on it and said, well, these people came out of it really strong. And even today, we look back on the people that got through the Second World War, especially in countries like in Europe, where there was occupational bombings or something like that. Here in Asia, where there was invasion and occupational bombings as well. We look back at those people saying they were resilient, they were strong, and they came out of the other side of it having shown us how to do it. And that's the mentality we need to instill in our children.
I mean, even in the States, where we didn't have to experience it firsthand, well, except for Hawaii, but we look at the soldiers, the men and women who helped during that period. We call them the greatest generation. And why would we use that term? But because they were able to manage their anxieties to some extent, lead through example, and trying to help and support the nations they were a part of, support the communities they were a part of.
And managing doesn't necessarily mean just burying it, because as we said earlier, that's a very bad thing to do. Managing it is knowing when to show the anxiety, when you can release it, and when you need to control it. And that's
And
managing the
how.
anxiety. And how, which is very important, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and that brings us to patience, and building off of what we were talking about modeling. When you receive bad news, like now you're losing part of your paycheck because of cutbacks, or you can't go somewhere because there's another lockdown order. Adults can deal with that in different ways. I know a lot of our gut instincts is to either hide and curl up in a ball on the bed in a deep depression, or maybe just start getting angry with anyone who just unfortunately happens to be in your path. This is where patience is very, very critical, because not only is it helpful for keeping some sense of calm in your household, but you're also demonstrating to your children, when you have a problem, when you come across a challenge or some kind of obstacle or struggle, this is the kind of attitude you should have. And as we said before, modeling is 90% of teaching. They're not going to listen to your words if your actions do something completely antithetical, completely different to it. So if you say, hey, I'm going to be calm if I get more bad news, and you're actually able to follow through, the teenagers and children are going to be able to internalize that more, saying, okay, this is how you react when you come across these struggles. Yeah.
And it's difficult, but there are kind of techniques to be able to do this. Mindfulness and one of the big things that they say is, if you feel those tensions rising and you're feeling yourself getting that anxiety in, doing a belly breathe. So breathing in as hard as you can, but really pulling it into your belly and holding it there for a little while, and then breathing back out again, really kind of helps to calm that feeling of I need to burst this out. It gives you time to actually very quickly reflect on how you want to react to that news that you've just been given. And there are lots of ways that we'll chat briefly about as we move through, but there are ways that you can kind of deal with these things. And if there's anybody good at discussing patience, it's this man here, who's the most patient man I think I've ever met.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where I do get impatient, and it's probably not the better times, but because I'm modeling for other adults and other teenagers, I'm not going to express those bad times I exhibited impatience. But I think what helps me, and I mean, besides having a father who was very, very patient and I looked up to as kind of my hero, and not everyone has access to that, so I'll try and see if I can give some other strategies too. What always works for me is remembering things like my training, remembering things like what my objectives are. If I receive bad news, say my paycheck gets cut, what's my objective? Is my objective to try and make the household go emotionally ugly for the rest of the night? No, that's not my objective. Is my objective to make someone else feel pain because of something that's causing me pain? No, that's not my objective. My objective is going to be to do what I can to try and keep the family happy, but also have them help me in this new challenge that I have to go through. Because for something like your paycheck getting docked, you will need help. I don't know many people who can take that in stride and just keep doing their thing. I tried it last year after I left the school. It didn't work out so well for me.
And you're right. It is very, very difficult. And how we deal with those, how we manage to maintain our composure, maintain our patience, as you say, is key to controlling our own anxieties, as well as modeling behavior to children and preventing them from becoming overly anxious.
And I might say things like expressing in front of your children things like maybe mild anger, but being able to do so in a way that's not directed at them. Like bringing your children to say, hey, I got some bad news from my boss and it makes me very, very angry. but this isn't your fault. This is between me and my boss, and I now have to do what I can to manage that anger. So I'm letting you know now, so that you know this really you're really not a part or a source of this anger that I'm feeling. But also so that I can model for you, and maybe the children and teenagers might not really get into it at this point, but also to let you know, this is what you do when something pushes you into a mood of anger, by kind of alerting the people in your household, letting them know that you're going through a difficult time, so that they have a chance to kind of prepare themselves, psych themselves out, maybe go to a different room, if they can, or go to the park if it's still open, to kind of allow you to express that in a way that hopefully doesn't become traumatic for anyone. Because sometimes if you see someone expressing pure rage or anger, that can be traumatic.
Very, very much so, very much so. And one of the big things that we try and teach with regards to discipline of children, etc., is, and this is kind of a link, because what tends to happen with us as adults is that we're anxious, we're scared, we're worried about what's happening, we're worried about the future, and that's a different way of looking at it in a minute. But we tend then to snap. We tend to have all of this building up, and then our child does something wrong, and we snap at them. And that's not going to help, and that forms this anxiety within them. Daddy wouldn't usually snap at me for this, and why is he snapping at me now? There's something wrong, blah blah blah. And what we tend to teach with behavioral discipline, trying to alter behavior in children, is the policeman approach, which is that if you've ever been stopped by a policeman, I'm not talking about the American policeman with guns. I don't say pull a gun on your child, but if you've ever been stopped by a policeman, they're always very calm. Generally speaking, they're very, very calm. They speak in a very matter-of-fact voice. They outline the problem, and then usually what they do is they ask you what you did wrong. And this is what we kind of teach, and this is a good way at the moment to try and train yourself. If you feel frustration at your children doing something wrong, then just talk to them, sit them down, say, right, what did you do wrong? Why did you do it? What do you think mummy or daddy would feel of you doing this? And if it requires taking a little bit further and corrective treatment, then what do we need to do to make sure that you don't do this again? And if you can kind of think in that process rather than snapping, that also will help in the long term to control any mental health and anxiety issues the child might experience.
And it might hopefully be more effective at stopping the problem behavior in the first place. If your children or the students that you're caring for see that you're irate, see that you're so angry you can't really listen to reason at that point, that you're kind of leaving them without any way of coping with it. And not only is that traumatic, like you said, but also it's kind of what lesson are they learning at that point? They're not learning that what they did was wrong. They're learning that it's okay for adults to be volatile, and maybe they're not learning what they should have done instead to do instead of the bad behavior, but maybe they're learning other strategies like, well, I may try it again in the future, but I'll just be able to hide it more
we're talking about all of this, and I would imagine people out there are thinking, well, that's all very well, but I'm still going to have this anxiety inside of me. Eventually, it's got to give. And you're quite right. And breathing is one of them, which is very, very useful. And that practice, that breathing, that breathing into your belly and releasing it is really, really good. But don't try and hide away your feelings. That's the worst thing you can do. The best thing is to actually acknowledge your feeling. If you feel anxious, if you feel angry, if you feel sad, it's not a bad thing.
It's natural. We're built to do that.
Precisely. We try not to say in counseling, etc. We try not to use terms like negative emotions, because emotions are emotions. They have a purpose. They are there for a reason. And to acknowledge that emotion is important. Right, I feel angry about this. And to say to yourself that you feel angry about it is good. And then you can begin to work on what it is and how then to reduce that anger. So question those thought patterns you have. Why do I feel angry about this? Why is it having such a strong effect on my emotions? And if you begin to think of it that way and analyze your own emotion, by the time you actually got to the bottom of it, you don't feel angry anymore. You don't feel that sense of this, that strong emotion that is there, whether that be anxiety. Why do I feel anxious? Well, the world's going to end. Well, is that strictly true? Or am I just taking it to a too far scenario? Well,
Depends
actually,
on your
the
news
chances are the
source.
world's going to end. Yeah. And that's another one. Okay, the world's probably not going to end, but this is never going to end. Well, actually, no, that's not strictly true. It has to end one day, and it may take a little while, but it will end. And eventually, as you start analyzing your thoughts and reining them back in by bit, you'll find yourself calming down, and those really strong emotions will subside. And one of the ways that I do it is I go for long walks. I go out and I have with my wife, and we go for 5, 6, 7 kilometer walks for an hour and a bit. And that's a really good way just to process, because you're also doing some exercise at the same time, getting yourself outside, you're getting some fresh air, you're getting those, because you're exercising, you're getting those lovely chemicals being released in your brain. Your happy chemicals are being released, which relaxes you, etc. And that whole process then begins to calm you down. And we try and go every day for at least kind of an hour's walk, because it helps to process everything, and it helps to formulate these strong emotions downwards again. Then the next time it crops up, and well, that'll be very useful. Yeah, that's another part of anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of weight I put on during lockdown.
So patience is very important. Understanding how modeling is constantly happening, whether you want it to or not, that's also very important. And I'd say another important element is looking at your family, your relationship with your children, with your teachers. If you're a teacher, then looking at the relationship between your students and their parents. Look at everyone as part of a team. We don't have conflicting, we shouldn't have conflicting goals here. Everyone in that dynamic wants each other and themselves to be happy and healthy. And we have a global struggle that's making that difficult, but we're working together in trying to make that happen. If you keep that mindset, then when you get bad news, more restrictions, more challenges thrown at you, then it helps remind you to not take that out on the people that you need to help you through it. You recognize, okay, I got this. It's I've got this challenge in front of me. It's probably too big for me to manage on my own. But maybe if I can bring in my children, maybe if I can bring in my students, their parent or their teacher to help me out, maybe we can find a way to turn this from a challenge more to an opportunity. I mean, I'll even throw in this live stream that we're doing right now. This was born from us trying to meet the challenges that we think a lot of parents and students and children and teachers are facing right now, is that they don't really have a source for this kind of, even if we're not providing a whole lot of information that people value, maybe more, they value it more from Gareth, maybe not so much from me, but at least there's someone talking about it. At least there's someone saying, hey, it's okay to talk about it. We don't have to keep this hidden. This is something that's adding a little bit of sadness or anger or unhappiness to all of us, but we don't have to hide it. There's a place to discuss this. There's a place to think about this and not feel shameful about it, because it's really, like you said, emotions aren't things you should be ashamed of having. They're natural. They're instinctual. They're part of what it means to be human.
And what you said with regards to talking to people, etc., is realizing that you're not in this by yourself. It is, and the biggest problem with lockdown, and here in Indonesia, lockdown is slightly different than lockdown in the US and the UK. I spoke to my mother yesterday in the UK, where I'm originally from, and they're under a 3-month lockdown order, which means they are only allowed to leave the house to either go to the supermarket, to the pharmacy, or for 1 hour a day to do some exercise. And that is the only time they're actually allowed to leave the house. And they're very much restricted in the distance they can go. Now, that's a lockdown. And the biggest problem there is that people are so isolated that they start believing that the problems they're facing are their problems. They are the only people actually suffering with these problems. And they're not. And everybody is suffering these problems. And to realize that you are not alone in this is vital. And it's one of the ways to actually accept what is happening. And that comes through talking to people and talking to family, talking to friends, talking to us. We're counselors. That's what we do. We're there to listen.
We gave you our phone number.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're there. And this is part of it. And one of the biggest ways to overcome many, many mental illnesses is the discussion of it, to talk about it, to process it, to actually recognize it, then to find solutions to it. And within counseling and within therapy with psychologists, it's left to the person with the problem to find their own solution to it. We can advise and guide down pathways, but it's that process that's important. It's the process of actually analyzing your problem, coming up with why it's there. How, if I want to, do I get rid of this problem? And the counselor, the psychologists, whoever is there to try and guide that pathway. And so recognizing it, knowing you're not the only one, and then seeking somebody to talk to is one of the big steps in reducing and solving it.
Helping you develop a plan that you can execute with the people in your household or those you normally interact with, and also supporting you in executing that plan and answering whatever questions we can to help make it easier for you to execute that plan. That's what our role basically is. And listen to any troubles that you have and help explain why those troubles might be happening, or try and get you to feel a sense of control over some more of those challenges that you have. Well,
exactly.
If there is a possibility for control there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've only got a few minutes left, but there's something I want to do real quick. The other article I was looking at was that UNICEF had an online forum for teens back last August for teens in Indonesia, and that got me to think about this online forum where they address questions that students and teenagers might have. I'm going to try and kind of lightning round this thing, so I'm going to try and make my answers quick, and you guys know how good I am at that. But Gareth, go ahead and let me know which ones you want to take, which ones you want to pass to me. I'm totally cool with that. Number one, from this, and the first three are from the forum. The rest are ones that I kind of thought of. Number one, stress from COVID. Is it normal for teens?
Yes, it's normal for everybody. As we've discussed during this webinar, everybody is anxious, from small children up to grandmas and granddads. Everybody is suffering. This is not normal. This is not what we are used to. This is not something that we as a species are very good at. We are social creatures. We're a social animal. We need that social interaction that's being taken away from us. So yes, it is perfectly normal. And expected, if anything else. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, unless you, for some reason, were living a lifehood for 30 years, putting yourself in some kind of quarantine for some strange reason, then this was a big change in your lifestyle over the last year for pretty much everyone. And whenever you come across forced changes of lifestyle, stress is always going to follow that. I mean, it always follows.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number two. Where can we share our concerns about mental wellness?
I'll let you take that one.
You can share it with us. All you have to do is call our phone line. Telephone number again is 0812-1009-4133. Or you can access our website at oxfordwellbeing.com. oxfordwellbeing.com, no space.
Put that in the comments. We'll put that into the comments as well at the end. Go onto Facebook, go onto LinkedIn, go onto Instagram. We have a presence in all of them at Oxford Wellbeing. So just go there. You will find us, or just Google Oxford Wellbeing. We're there. Yeah, just Google us. And there are a myriad of ways of contacting us. We want you to contact us.
And it's more important that you find someone, even if you prefer not to do it with us, but we do hope you do it with us. But yeah,
so talk to your friends, talk to your family. You know, there are plenty of places where you can still interact with people. My daughter adores Roblox, and she's always on that. And I know she chats to people on Roblox, just saying, you know, oh, I'm feeling a little bit kind of this today. I'm feeling a little bit that today. And generally they come back just going, oh, why? What's the matter? And they just chat, and it's a very, very healthy thing for them to do.
The best kind of counseling or feedback service you want to go for is someone or a service that doesn't really that doesn't give you any judgments, that doesn't try to put your past behavior or your thoughts in like a good or bad category. It doesn't work like that. Basically, it comes down to, what do you want out of the help, and can the specialist assist you with that? What does the specialist think? What new behaviors, what exercises, what strategies can help you get to where you want to be? If you find someone who's helping you that way, that's good. If you have someone coming in and saying, "Oh, you did this and that's bad," or "You did that and that's bad," no, that's not helpful. That's not what we're about.
Yeah, and that's not what we do within counselling. It's not what we do within therapy, etc. We try to avoid labels as much as possible, and therefore we don't say that's bad behaviour. Generally, that's just behaviour that needs to be altered, and there's a reason for that behaviour. And within all behaviour, there's a reason for. You know, I know Kenneth and I both despise the word lazy. The child is described as being lazy. No child is lazy. There is a reason the child is not motivated to do what he is expected to do by somebody. And what we try and do is find the cause of that lack of motivation. That child is not lazy. It could just be, I mean, I had an example ages ago where I had a child who throughout his whole life struggled with academics, and he was told he was stupid throughout most of his life, and eventually he believes it. And we set on a program of positive reinforcement. We tried to constantly tell him, no, every little thing he did right, we praised him for. And he generally started to all of a sudden, actually, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm quite good. And then that turned to, no, I am good, to I can be better. And he really, over the course of a year or two, really changed into a model student.
One of the sayings that I like using whenever I'm engaged in applied behavior analysis is when someone asks me, why did that person do that? Or why did that child do that? And my gut instinct reaction is, because it worked, because it works. And that helps redirect you to think that there are reasons that lead a child to do something. Like you said, I hate the word lazy because it's really a question of motivation.
Horrible.
How motivated was the student to do what you wanted them to do, as opposed to doing something else that was probably, frankly, more fun, more interesting to them. So, make sure that whoever you seek for guidance or support, please make sure that it's in a way that is helpful to you and non-judgmental. Third question, and I'll try and get through the rest of these quick. Tips for dealing with stress. Oh, we kind of already gave you some, but they work.
I mean, they work. And one of the biggest ones that I was going to leave for the end, but I'll put it in now. One of the biggest ones with regards definitely to this COVID situation is live in the moment. Don't think too far ahead. that's when you begin to get anxious. I found myself doing it last week. I was sitting there, they were talking about the length of time that it's going to take for schools to reopen. They were talking about the amount of time to get the vaccine out to everybody. And I was then beginning to think into the future. And I could feel the anxiety and the stress in me rising and rising and rising. And I literally, I had to snap myself out of it and go, no, you can't think like that. You just got to live for now. Live today. Tomorrow is a different day. We'll cope with tomorrow when tomorrow gets here, but we just get through today. And that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's something you have to learn how to do when you come across a global crisis like this. And that's not to say that you should stop all planning for the future. That's not what we're saying. But there is a difference between doing a little bit of planning that might be able to help you in the future, maybe short-term future, maybe something you want to set for the long term, and then just kind of leaving it once you've done that bit of planning, versus just circling over your fears about everything you don't know about that might happen to you in the next year or two. There should be noted there's a difference between those two, and so try to stay towards more practical planning if you got to do it.
Yeah, if you're the sort of person that has to plan for the future, then set yourself positive goals.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to learn to play the guitar by at the end of next year or the end of this year. I'm going to go and I'm going to do my master's degree. I'm going to go and I'm going to learn a new language. Set yourself positive targets for the long term and try and steer clear of thinking the negative things for the long term.
And remind yourself, this is just a plan. You're going to take some steps to it, but a lot of crazy stuff can still happen. So if you got to change that plan or alter it or adjust accordingly, it's expected, as with any other time. Next question. How do I find out if my son or daughter, sibling, and uncle, how do I find out if they are depressed?
Okay. That's quite a long one, and there are symptoms that children and adults exhibit. I think probably best with that is we will put something in the comments, a little symptom checker thing, really, that will aid with that, because things that I said earlier, like if it's a small child saying regularly saying things like my tummy hurts or I feel sick, when you think, well, there should be no reason for this, they're offsetting that feeling, trying to deal with an emotion, and they can't explain that emotion, so they create a physical pain because they can relate to that somehow. There are lots and lots of little ways that you can recognize anxiety and depression. I think if we put something into the comments later on about it, or
we just do another video on it,
or do another video on it, or better still, I'll put something onto our website and onto our social media about it. Just ways of checking.
I'll throw in there something real quick, and this is, not to discount what you said. This is not an exhaustive answer. This is just a 2-second, primer. Depression can manifest in many, many different ways, and probably one of the common ones that we saw, at least in the school, might be bad behavior. Sometimes that can kind of be a clue that something's going on, but it's not always the case. It's just one of many. So, if you notice that something's different, you may want to check in with someone. But yeah, we'll probably do a longer video explaining why, how, what, where, all this.
One thing that it may be possible is just to try and describe the different levels of behavior that lead to anxiety. And if you recognize yourself having these kind of behaviors, then you're heading towards it. And that's kind of things like we've spoken about, where it's all or nothing. In your brain, it's black and white. There's no gray area. This is safe or it's dangerous. It's good or it's bad. There's nothing in the middle. If you find yourself constantly focusing on negatives, your negative filter is constantly on. That's not bad. Overgeneralizing on things, this is terrible. Everybody is going to catch COVID. Everybody who gets COVID is going to die. No, we're overgeneralizing everything there. Personalization, blaming everything on yourself. Everything has to be your fault. is another one. The big one, catastrophizing, which is that going to the extreme of a reaction of something. I've got COVID, I'm going to die. No, it's not going to happen. What Kenneth was just talking about as well, setting unrealistic expectations, making sure if you do set yourself goals, you are reasonably okay with them not necessarily going as well as you think they might go. You don't always have to be perfect. You can't read minds either. And if you find yourself that you get angry with people because they haven't, you gave them a hint and they didn't do what you wanted them to do, that's unrealistic, and that's again you slipping down into this negative thing, as is blaming other people for things. And the other one is maximizing and discounting. You maximize your failures, and you're minimizing your successes. So you're not concentrating on what you do well. You're concentrating on what you're doing badly. And you forget the good things that happen. You remember the bad things that happen. So if you're exhibiting thoughts like these, then you really, really are on a slope that is going to possibly lead you to anxiety and then on to depression.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have moments where these thoughts pop in, you automatically need to be shipped to your local psychotherapist within like 20 minutes, or the world's going to cave in.
It's persistence, and it's multiple. If you find yourself doing lots of these all of the time, or most of the time, then you may need to start analyzing yourself a little bit more about what you're thinking and why you're thinking that way, and maybe talk to somebody.
And from what I learned from the DSM, which is kind of the Bible for all things psychological, it's usually time to talk to someone when you notice it's harming your productivity. Are you having trouble keeping a job? Are you having trouble getting your assignments in? Are you having trouble, meeting people, having fun nights out? That's usually a good sign too. But like you said, that's a whole can of beans. So we'll probably just tackle all of that on our next we'll probably do
That's a good one to do a webinar on. We'll do one on that.
Okay, last one, and I think this is pretty quick. Are children of certain ages immune from depression?
We had an interesting topic on the non webinar last week about this.
Yeah. She should have been there.
What my thoughts on this is that as soon as a child becomes cognitive, as soon as a child begins to realize their own existence, they can be susceptible to anxiety and depression and any other mental illnesses. And the other thing is that just because a child is not cognitively aware of their own existence, it doesn't mean that we can't start laying the foundation for future mental illness in place. If a baby is neglected, if a baby is not fed, if when a baby cries it is ignored constantly and neglected, then when that child grows, those experiences are already embedded. The brain has already processed that if I do this, then I'm not going to get anything. Or if I cry, I get hit. And that's often the case in abuse cases with very young children who haven't yet learned to recognize their own self. And my thoughts are that it can kind of lead on to later problems. So to answer the question, no, there isn't.
Generally, I agree that there's no immunity for depression. It's something that people, I mean, what was the anecdote I used last time? That's like saying, is there an age of a person where someone can be immune from drowning? It's like, no, you kind of need air to breathe all the time. So it's just one of the, I'm not going to use the word features, but it's just one of the components of being in control of a brain, is that brain is always capable of experiencing some form, mild or severe form of depression. And so
there are neuroscientists that study the brain of unborn babies who say that even what goes on while a child is still in the womb, while it is unborn, can have an impact on their future self, on their cognitive development. And so we can go back even further and say potentially, even an unborn child can begin to process that problem that's going to create mental health issues later in life.
Talk about things like imprinting,
Yeah.
listening to voices, music.
Yeah. That's neuroscience, and that's very complicated.
Yeah.
Completely different subject.
Probably
Definitely
a
not
little bit
qualified.
above my breadth of understanding, but yeah, I think the last point I want to make on that is that it's not that the children or people of certain ages may not experience depression, but just that at every age there might be a different manifestation of how that depression, what it looks like, what the visible signs of that depression, how they manifest. That changes. You might get tantruming or lack of tantruming even, at young ages. But then as they get older, maybe it becomes more discreet. Maybe it becomes more easily hidden. Maybe it becomes more destructive when you get into things like risk-taking behavior or addiction. So, but yeah, if you need help with changing your behaviors or helping to change anyone else's behavior, just go ahead and check our website, check our phone number. I'll make sure to put both of them in the description. I'll probably also throw a few other things in there, like maybe my Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'll try to make sure that if you do follow my Twitter, I'll just post stuff related to this channel. I don't want to throw in my political. No, I'm going to keep politics away from Twitter. Okay. See how challenging that is. But if you want to take a look at any of our other videos, just go ahead and like and subscribe this video and check out some of our others. It's just going to be something we're going to be building for a while, adding more and more videos, looking at a pace of maybe once a month, but I may throw in a few short ones here and there too. And with that, any last word?
No, nothing from me. Just make sure out there in the world you look after your mental health. Mental health and knees, they're the two things you really need to look after in your life, because they're the things that are most difficult to make better later.
Mental health and knees?
Yep. Once your knees go,
I'd probably also throw your back in there too. You only got one of those.
Too many years playing rugby, I got messed up knees.
Yeah. I'm starting to feel it too. I'm only 40 and I'm starting to feel that. I was like, hey, I thought I got another 10, 15 years out of these. The exercise helps. So, get exercise too.
Well, I'm 52 and my body's definitely falling to pieces now. So, but the brain's still there. The brain's still good.
I think mine's still there. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to leave this on YouTube. So if you just somehow managed to pop in an hour after we said we'd start, that's fine, because all you can do is just give YouTube a few minutes to process, and then you can start from the very beginning and hear all about our discussion on students' mental health. And hopefully this will be a trend where I always remember to click the go live button. Get these things out at the time I originally say I'm going to put them out. Learning new skills.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Ken. Take good care.
Anytime. And with that, we will end our broadcast. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Let's see if it ends today.